My boyfriend made me look like a fool at the party he himself invited me to, but I didn't let it slide. I'm Melanie, 27, and I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh with my boyfriend, Zach, who's 28. We've been together for almost 2 years now. Things with Zach are, well, they're comfortable. You know that stage in a relationship where you're not sure if things are still exciting or if you're just used to the rhythm. That's us. He's into tech sales, always networking, always thinking about the next connection that'll get him promoted or land him a better gig. So when our landlord's daughter, Savannah, invited us to a party she was throwing at her dad's rental property in Shadyside, Zach jumped at the opportunity. She knows people in commercial real estate, he said, like that was supposed to matter to me. I wasn't in the mood for a party, honestly. I hadn't left the apartment much lately except for work. I've been freelancing from home and kind of stuck in that hermit loop where days blend together. But Zach was persistent. He made it sound like it was practically mandatory for his career, so I said fine. Why not? We got there just after 9. The place was nice, one of those older townhouses with high ceilings and too many rooms for one person. Savannah was waiting at the door with a drink already in hand, barefoot on the porch, wearing a silky robe that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. She gave me the kind of hug where she didn't actually touch me and greeted Zach like they were old friends, laughing a little too hard at something he said. I let it slide. The party itself was crowded but tame. More white wine than beer, more button-downs than hoodies. The kind of place where you nod a lot and smile through conversations about who just closed on what property or who's investing in what startup. I wasn't feeling it. I poured myself some sangria and found a spot near the bookshelf in the living room to disappear into for a while. Zach was already deep in conversation with a guy named Connor who looked like he played lacrosse in college and never stopped talking about it. Maybe 45 minutes in, Savannah came over and plopped down next to me on the arm of the couch. She was giggling about something, but there wasn't anyone around to be laughing with. She had this energy that felt a little off, like she was performing even when no one was watching. She leaned in and said, "You and Zach are such a cute couple," drawing out the word cute like she was describing a pet. Then she added, "How long do you think he's going to keep pretending he doesn't know I exist?" I blinked, thought maybe I misheard her. I gave a little awkward laugh, like maybe this was some weird joke she thought was clever. She just smirked and looked over at him, still talking to lacrosse guy. I said something like, "I'm sorry, what?" She shrugged and said, "Oh, don't worry. It's not a big deal. Guys are like that sometimes. It's not personal." Not personal. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get away from her. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the way she said it, like she was letting me in on some inside joke I wasn't supposed to be part of. I stayed in the bathroom longer than I needed to, just staring at my reflection and wondering if I was being paranoid. When I came out, Zach was gone from the living room. I wandered through the crowd looking for him. I checked the kitchen. Not there. Backyard. Not there. I even did that awkward open a random door thing in case he'd gone to the wrong bathroom. Nothing. I finally found him upstairs. He was in one of the bedrooms with Savannah. The door wasn't closed all the way, and I could hear her laugh before I saw them. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, and he was standing too close. His hands weren't on her, but they weren't not on her either. One hand on the dresser behind her, like he was just leaning in to hear better or something. But there was no reason to be that close. No music up there. No crowd. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there in the hallway like an idiot, watching my boyfriend flirt with our landlord's daughter like I didn't exist. Eventually, I stepped in. I don't even remember what I said. Something short, sharp, probably sarcastic. Zach jumped back like he'd been caught stealing, and Savannah? She just looked at me and smiled like she'd been expecting this moment. He tried to play it off. Said he was asking her about investment properties and she had invited him upstairs to show him something. I asked if what she was showing him required her to sit on a bed with her robe halfway open. He didn't answer. Savannah stood up and said, "Maybe I should give you two some space," like she was doing us a favor. We left not long after that. The ride home was dead silent. I stared out the window while he drove, my fists clenched in my lap. He didn't apologize. He didn't even try to explain himself further. Just kept his eyes on the road like if he didn't speak, it would all go away. I haven't really spoken to him since. That was Saturday. It's Monday now, and he's been staying at a friend's place, supposedly to give me space. I've just been sitting here in our apartment, looking at all the little things that make up our life. Photos on the fridge, shared bills on the counter, the half-used shampoo bottles in the shower, and wondering how many signs I ignored. I don't know what comes next. I just know I'm not going to be the girlfriend who gets quietly erased while someone else gets invited upstairs. The party itself wasn't bad. It was a little more upscale than I expected, honestly. Real glassware instead of solo cups. The kind of ambient playlist that clearly wasn't just thrown together 5 minutes before the guests arrived. There were string lights in the backyard, expensive-looking candles flickering in the corners, and people sipping actual cocktails instead of cheap liquor mixed with soda. It felt like one of those adult gatherings you see in movies, where everyone's just tipsy enough to feel confident and charming. Zach, of course, went into full performance mode the second we walked through the door. It's like he flipped a switch. He hugged people we didn't know, made jokes like he was auditioning for a stand-up set, and laughed a little too loudly at his own lines. Within 15 minutes, he had a drink in one hand and his other arm around someone's shoulders, telling some exaggerated story about closing a big deal at work. The guy thrives on attention, especially in rooms full of strangers who don't know him well enough to call out the embellishments. At first, I tried to roll with it. I found myself a drink, something citrusy and strong from a makeshift bar in the kitchen, and settled into a corner near a bookshelf where I could observe without getting dragged into small talk. I don't mind people, really. I just like watching more than performing. But Zach? He was built for crowds. He glowed under those little pockets of attention, basked in them like sunlight. It didn't take long to notice he was drinking faster than usual. He started with a craft beer, then moved on to whiskey, then another beer. By the third round, his voice was louder, his gestures more animated, and he was doing that thing where he leaned a little too close to people when he talked, like proximity would make his stories more engaging. His eyes looked glassy already, and his words were starting to blur slightly at the edges. At one point, I walked past him on my way to the kitchen and saw him with a beer in each hand, laughing so hard he had to pause between words. I gave him a look, not even a sharp one, just that raised eyebrow half-smile I always use when he's being extra. Going a little overboard with the beer, aren't we? I said lightly, half teasing, half not. He turned to me too quickly, his smile freezing for a second before melting into something sour. After your constant grumbling, I want to relax a little, he said, his tone drenched in sarcasm, loud enough that the two guys next to him went quiet. I blinked. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Like he'd been waiting for an excuse to let that little jab out. Like the party gave him the cover to get away with it. I opened my mouth to respond, but he was already turning back to his conversation, already laughing again, already pretending like it never happened. I stood there for a second, unsure if I was being too sensitive or if he'd actually just embarrassed me on purpose in front of strangers. Either way, I didn't feel like smiling anymore. I walked back to the kitchen and refilled my drink, the glass cool against my fingers, trying to focus on the lemon peel floating at the top instead of the way my stomach had twisted. From across the room, I could see him talking to a group of people near the sliding glass door. He was gesturing wildly, clearly in the middle of another story, and everyone was laughing again. He looked like he was having the time of his life. I felt like I was watching someone I didn't know. Or maybe someone I did know. Someone I'd just chosen to ignore when he made comments like that, because it was easier than starting an argument in the middle of a crowd. Either way, I didn't move to join him. I stayed right where I was, letting the music wash over me, pretending that the bitterness in my mouth was just from the drink. I was standing near the patio door, halfway through my second drink, and trying to decide whether I'd rather endure small talk with the woman next to me, who kept referring to her dog as her fur baby, or go back inside to hide in the kitchen. That's when I heard my name. Not just my name, my nickname, the one Zach uses when he's trying to be sweet. My Mel, he said, his voice loud and casual, the kind of voice people use when they know they're holding court and expect the laughs to come easily. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I hadn't even realized he was standing that close, just around the corner in the hallway near the coat rack, talking to two guys and a woman I didn't recognize. I didn't move. Something in his tone made me freeze, made me stay completely still. I swear, he said, laughing, I'd be living in a pile of garbage if it wasn't for my Mel. She's like, I don't know, a little house fairy or something. She just kind of floats around the apartment cleaning up after me, paying the bills, refilling the soap, you know? Like magic. But don't worry, I'm not dumb enough to marry her just for that. The group laughed, but not the kind of laughter that comes from something actually funny. It was thinner, polite, the kind people use when they don't know if they should laugh or walk away. And she's obsessed with spreadsheets, he went on, clearly enjoying himself now. I swear, she tracks our grocery budget like she's managing the finances of a Fortune 500 company. I call her our little home accountant. You should see the way she panics if we spend $6 more than planned on almond milk. Someone chuckled, and someone else muttered something I couldn't make out, but Zach didn't stop. She even has this cleaning schedule, like, by day of the week. Tuesday is baseboards, or something. I don't even know what a baseboard is. I just call her my mop with buns. That one landed harder. The room was quiet for a second, just enough time for the words to settle in. Then someone gave a short, awkward laugh, the kind that sounds more like a reflex than a response. No one said anything to challenge him. They just kind of stood there, trapped in that uncomfortable bubble he'd created. I couldn't move. I stood completely still, staring at the doorframe, trying to process what I had just heard. Not because it was shocking. If I'm being honest with myself, it wasn't. It was more like it confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. That all the quiet things he says under his breath when we argue, the little barbs masked as jokes, weren't just slips. They were how he really saw me. A maid. A budget manager. A fixture in his apartment, convenient and reliable, but not someone he took seriously. Not someone he respected. I stepped away before he could see me. My cheeks were burning, but not from embarrassment. It was something colder, sharper. I walked straight to the kitchen, set my drink down without finishing it, and leaned against the counter trying to steady my breath. He had no idea I heard him. And in that moment, I didn't care. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering what I could say to make him understand me better. I was wondering why I'd spent so long thinking that was even possible. Later in the evening, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Zach decided it was the perfect time to make a toast. Someone had mentioned something about living with their boyfriend, and a few others chimed in with their own experiences. Some funny, some sweet, mostly harmless. It was the kind of casual, tipsy conversation that floats around when everyone's a few drinks in and feeling loose. But then Zach raised his glass. He stood near the center of the room now, a beer in one hand, that stupid, cocky smile on his face, the kind he uses when he thinks he's being clever. "All right," he said, lifting his drink a little higher. "I've got one for you. Living with Melanie." He looked around, grinning like he was delivering the punchline of a great joke. It's like having a housekeeper with a Netflix subscription. A few people gave polite laughs, the kind you give before you realize the speaker isn't finished. I felt the heat rising in my chest instantly. "She cleans," he continued. "She pays the bills. But, honestly, she's a little too boring for anything else." That was it. No one laughed this time. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. Just this hollow silence and the clink of someone nervously setting their glass down on a table nearby. A couple of people looked at me. Some glanced at the floor. One woman awkwardly cleared her throat. Zach didn't even notice. Or maybe he did and thought everyone was just being uptight. I have no idea. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I walked out. I didn't storm off. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a drink in his face or make a dramatic scene. I just turned around, stepped out of the room, and kept walking. I went straight down the stairs, through the entryway, and out the front door into the cool night air. I could still hear the music faintly from the backyard, muffled by the walls, but I didn't stop. I didn't check to see if anyone followed me. I just walked to the sidewalk, each step feeling like I was slowly peeling off a version of myself I didn't want to wear anymore. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't staying. Not at that party. And not with him. I was halfway down the porch steps when I heard the door swing open behind me. I didn't turn around, but I knew it was him. His footsteps were fast and uneven, the kind of walk that comes from trying to keep your balance after one drink too many. I just kept moving, determined to get to the sidewalk before he could catch up, but I wasn't fast enough. Zach reached out and grabbed my wrist, fingers tight, almost too tight, yanking me back a little. I stumbled, but didn't fall. His grip burned, partly from pressure, partly from the sheer shock of it. "Look at this," he called out, turning toward the door where people had started to gather, drawn by the noise. "Look how dramatically she's running away. She can't even exit like a human being." Laughter. From more than one person. Some laughed awkwardly, not knowing what else to do, but others seemed to genuinely find it funny. One guy even clapped, like this was some kind of performance. My whole body locked up. I could feel every cell in my skin trying to crawl away. I tried pulling my arm back, but he didn't let go right away. His grip tightened for a second, like he wanted to prove a point, like he needed the audience to see that he still had control. When he finally released me, it wasn't gentle. I had to take a step back to steady myself. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell or cry. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how far gone he was. Not just drunk, but gone in a way that felt mean and deliberate. He knew what he was doing. He wanted me humiliated. He wanted the room to laugh with him, even if it meant tearing me down to get it. But I couldn't leave like that. Not with everyone staring, not with him standing behind me like he'd won. So I turned around, walked slowly back through the doorway, and made my way to the couch. I sat down without saying a word, my hands clenched in my lap, my face burning with shame and anger. Zach didn't follow me inside right away. He stayed out there on the porch, still grinning, soaking up whatever was left of the attention. The conversations inside had shifted, people talking in low voices, some of them glancing in my direction, but no one said anything to me. No one asked if I was okay. I was just sitting there, alone in a room full of people, feeling like I had somehow become the spectacle everyone wanted to pretend they hadn't seen. And the worst part? I stayed. For a little while, I just sat there, too stunned to move, too tired to get up again. I didn't want to give him another moment to twist into a joke. I just sat there, angry, hollow, and so unbelievably tired. I sat there on the couch, the room around me buzzing with noise that felt a million miles away. People were talking, laughing again, music still playing in the background, but it all sounded warped and distant, like I was underwater. Zach was back to holding court near the kitchen, smiling too wide, gesturing like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just yanked my arm in front of a crowd of people and turned me into a joke. And I just sat there, quiet, still, trying not to fall apart in a room full of strangers who had seen too much and understood too little. I kept my eyes down on the drink I hadn't touched, fingers wrapped tight around the glass, not because I wanted it, but because I needed to hold something that wouldn't fall apart in my hands. Unlike everything else lately, in my head, I started replaying everything. Not just the last few hours, but the last few months. Maybe even longer than that. The washing machine that broke in the middle of winter. I was the one who called the repair guy, who took off work to wait at the apartment, who paid the $180 bill when Zach said he couldn't because of timing issues with his bank account. The same washing machine, he later told his coworker he fixed himself. The rent that came due 2 days late in February. He had promised to Venmo me his half on the first, then the second, then the third, and by the fourth, I paid it myself because I didn't want to deal with late fees. He called it a temporary cash flow problem. That's how he talks. Like he's a CEO and I'm just his assistant, smoothing out the chaos behind the scenes. I remembered the groceries I bought every week. The budget spreadsheet I made because he kept forgetting what we needed. The times I found his gym socks on the couch, dishes on the nightstand, Amazon boxes piled up in the hallway, and just dealt with it because it was easier than asking him for the 100th time. And then there was the time he promised to call the internet company when our Wi-Fi was down. 3 days later, nothing. I ended up doing it during my lunch break, sitting on hold for 40 minutes while eating cold pasta out of a Tupperware. And when it was finally fixed, he posted online about how annoying it had been dealing with the tech guy. All of it, all of those moments, came crashing down in my head like a floodgate had opened. They weren't isolated incidents. They weren't accidents or forgetfulness or just a rough patch. It was a pattern, a system. He dropped things, and I picked them up. Over and over again. I didn't live with a partner. I lived with a project. Who am I in his life? A girlfriend? A partner? No. I'm a free housewife with a debit card. He didn't respect me. Not really. He appreciated what I did as long as it stayed invisible. As long as it didn't interrupt the version of himself he performed in front of other people. And I was so used to filling in the gaps for him, I didn't even realize how wide they'd gotten. I had built a relationship on scaffolding, convinced myself it was a home. Now I was just sitting there in someone else's living room, in someone else's party, and for the first time, it hit me. I was exhausted. Not just from tonight. From all of it. From covering for him, fixing things, pretending things were fine, telling myself he didn't mean it when he said something cruel. I wasn't in a partnership. I was in a quiet kind of servitude, one chore and one apology at a time. And the worst part was, I had gotten good at it. Too good. The ride home was silent. Not the kind of silence that follows a fight, heavy and waiting to break open again, but a colder kind. Final. Zach drove, his knuckles loose on the wheel, eyes glazed over and blinking too slow. I didn't offer to take the keys. I didn't speak. I just stared out the window, letting the streetlights flick across my face like static. He hummed something tuneless under his breath once or twice, but gave up halfway through each time. When we pulled into the lot, he didn't even bother parking straight. He left the car crooked, halfway over the line, and stumbled out without waiting for me. By the time I opened the apartment door, he was already on the couch, shoes still on, slouched sideways with one arm flung over his eyes like he was trying to disappear under it. I walked past him, through the kitchen and into the bedroom. The light was still on, the one he always left on because he said it made the room feel less gloomy. I turned it off. Back in the hallway, I heard him groan. "Babe," he mumbled. Not even a real word, just air and noise. "Babe." I didn't answer. I took my notebook from the bottom drawer of the dresser and carried it to the kitchen. Sat down at the table we bought secondhand last spring, the one I spent 3 hours sanding and repainting because he said he wanted something with personality and then never touched it again. I opened to a clean page and started writing. Not ideas, not possibilities. A plan. I wrote the date at the top. Then, 1. Check what's left in savings. 2. Look into short-term sublets. 3. Make a list of what I need to take. 4. Start moving things out slowly. Books, chargers, paperwork. Nothing noticeable. 5. Tell Alyssa I might need to stay with her a few nights. 6. Cancel the Wi-Fi. It's under my name. 7. Leave the spare key on the counter. Each line felt solid, like stepping on a floor that wouldn't give out. This wasn't a fantasy or a threat or something I'd scribble and forget in the morning. It wasn't about drama or proving a point. It was logistics, practicality, a decision. In the living room, Zach shifted on the couch and let out a long, slow exhale, the kind that ends with a snore. I sat still for a while longer, staring at the list. No part of me felt scared, only done. The next morning, the apartment felt too bright. The kind of cold, clean light that makes everything look sharper than it should, like reality was being lit from an unflattering angle. I got up before he did. Not intentionally. My body just didn't want to stay in bed any longer, not next to him. I didn't sleep much anyway. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic wheeze of his drunken breathing and wondering how I had let it get this far. I made breakfast like I always do. Oatmeal, black coffee, half a banana sliced on the side. But only one plate. Only one cup. I didn't make anything for him. No second mug left out for him to pour into later. No extra toast on the rack, just in case he wandered in hungry. Just one breakfast, one person. Me. He stumbled out of the bedroom about 20 minutes later, hair a mess, wearing the same clothes from last night. He looked rough, but not sorry. Just inconvenienced. You seriously making breakfast and ignoring me? He asked, walking into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Are you actually this offended over a couple of jokes? I didn't say anything. I took another bite of oatmeal and kept my eyes on the window. The street outside was still and quiet. A neighbor walked her dog across the lot, and I watched the leash sway gently in the wind like it was the most important thing in the world. Zach let out a breath, exaggerated and loud, like I was being impossible. Jesus, Mel. You always do this. Blow things out of proportion. It was a party. People joke around. You can't even take a little teasing now. Still nothing. I took a sip of coffee. He moved closer, leaning against the counter like he was trying to force a moment. You're really going to sit there and sulk? That's mature. I turned my head and looked at him. Not angry. Not even cold. Just done. You've said enough, I told him. He blinked like he didn't understand what I meant. Or maybe like he did, but didn't want to admit it. Either way, I wasn't going to explain. I picked up my empty bowl, walked it to the sink, and rinsed it out. He stood there, waiting for more, waiting for me to argue or cry, or give him something to push against. I gave him nothing. After he left for work, or wherever it is he actually goes during the day, I opened my laptop and got to work. Not just to distract myself, but with purpose. I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to leave on my terms, clean, clear, and with every piece of proof I might need. I started with the expenses. I opened my budgeting app, the one I used religiously because he never bothered to track a single thing, and I exported everything from the last 12 months. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries, household items, anything that went into keeping this apartment running. Then I opened a new spreadsheet and began categorizing every single payment. Rent, 10 months fully paid by me, 2 months split. Internet, my account, my auto pay, every month covered. Groceries, 70% mine, easily, sometimes more. Cleaning supplies, always me. I even noted down things like laundry detergent, dish soap, paper towels, trash bags. He used them, of course. He just never thought to replace them. Like they grew back on their own. Once the spreadsheet was done, I started compiling screenshots, bank transfers, digital receipts, photos of handwritten shopping lists in my phone notes, and even a few emails where I reminded him, politely, back then, that his half of the rent was overdue. I uploaded them all to a private folder in my cloud account and backed them up to a flash drive just in case. Then I moved on to inventory. I walked through the apartment room by room, noting what belonged to me. The coffee table, I bought it secondhand and refinished it myself. The blender on the counter, mine. The dishes, the utensils, the knife set his mom complimented once, and he took credit for every last piece from a sale I hit with my cousin last year. The gray towels in the bathroom, the navy sheets on the bed, the throw pillows on the couch he always threw on the floor. I made a second list and snapped photos. Each item got its own folder with a timestamp, picture, and a short note. Purchased with personal funds, or gifted directly to me. The only things I left off were the couch and the TV. He technically paid half for those, although I remembered I had driven across town to pick them up while he played video games and texted to ask if I was almost done. I planned the move in stages. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet removal of what was mine, piece by piece, starting with the things he wouldn't notice right away. I'd take the winter coats from the closet first, the books from the shelf that he never touched, my extra bedding from the top of the wardrobe. Then the kitchen items, slowly swapped out and boxed up. Things would just start disappearing while he was out, like the effort I had put into our life together. Just fading, one unnoticed detail at a time. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what I'd built, what I'd paid for, what I'd carried while he performed. This wasn't emotional. It was a checklist. and I intended to complete every item on it. It started with the headphones. They were mine, bought with my own money when I picked up that second freelance contract last summer. He always used them, though. Said they were better than his. I took them off the desk one afternoon while he was in the shower and slipped them into my tote bag with a pair of chargers and my laptop stand. He didn't notice. The next day, I packed up my Kindle, my camera, and a few notebooks from the shelf, one at a time, in a reusable grocery bag I kept by the door. I told him I was running errands. He grunted something without looking up from his phone. Julia was the first person I told. Not in some long, tearful confession. Just a text. I'm leaving him. Can I store some stuff at your place? Her reply came within 30 seconds. Yes. When? That weekend. While Zach was busy playing some more game on the PlayStation with his headset on and the curtains drawn like he was in a bunker, Julia pulled up outside in her little blue Civic. I had already packed 2 boxes, kitchen things mostly, and a few of my books, wrapped in towels to keep them from clinking against each other. She didn't say much when I opened the door, just raised her eyebrows like, "You ready?" I nodded. We moved quickly, quietly. The first load went out in under 15 minutes. He didn't even glance away from the screen. We passed behind him 3 times with full arms, and he never asked where we were going. The third time, he paused his game just long enough to say, "Hey, are we out of snacks?" I said, "I think so," and kept walking. We took my artwork off the walls. The framed photos of me and my sister. My desk lamp. My external hard drive. My favorite throw blanket. The one he always balled up and left on the floor. I folded it neatly and put it in the back seat of Julia's car. She handed me a cold bottle of water when I climbed in, and I almost laughed at how prepared she was. He never asked where the headphones went, or why the books were missing, or why the bathroom cabinet looked a little emptier. I think he just assumed I was reorganizing, or maybe he didn't think about it at all. That was always the problem. He never really saw the things around him. He just used them until they were gone. So I kept packing. Slowly. Strategically. I would take something every day, one drawer at a time. By the end of the week, half of my life was gone, and he still hadn't noticed a thing. He left for the gym around 11, slamming the door like always, like the world was just one more thing getting in his way. I watched him from the kitchen window as he walked across the lot in those ridiculous neon sneakers he thought made him look serious about cardio. I waited until he was out of sight, then turned back to the apartment. The last boxes were already stacked by the door. My coat was draped over the edge of one of them, the last thing I hadn't packed. I took a quick look around the place. The air felt stale, like even the apartment knew something was finally over. The dishes in the sink weren't mine. The pile of laundry on the floor wasn't mine. The smell of body spray clinging to the hallway, definitely not mine. It felt like walking through a hotel room I'd never booked, just someone else's mess waiting to be cleaned up. I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a printed list of everything he owed me, line by line, with dates and amounts. Rent totals, grocery costs, shared purchases I'd paid for a loan. I didn't expect him to pay me back. That wasn't the point. The point was, for once, he was going to have to look at it all. Every ignored promise. Every empty, "I'll get it next time." Under the totals, I wrote in pen, "Your turn to clean the toilet. Don't forget the rent. P.S. Netflix is off." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I walked to the front door, pulled the keys off my ring, and placed them in the small cardboard box I had labeled odds and ends with a Sharpie. I carried the last of my things down to Julia's car, where the trunk was already open. She didn't say anything when I got in. Just started the engine. We didn't look back. I didn't need to see his reaction. I didn't care if he crumpled the note or ignored it completely. I wasn't writing it for him. I was writing it for me. So I could walk away knowing that nothing was left behind. Not even the part of me that used to wait for him to change. It didn't take long. By the time the sun had set that same day, I had 5 missed calls and 3 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. The first one was just silence and breathing. The second was Zach's voice, low and pissed, real mature Melanie. You couldn't even have a conversation like an adult. The third was shorter, slurred and angry. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." I didn't bother listening to the rest. I just hit delete. The next morning, there was a new message request on Facebook. From him. A wall of text that started with, "Look, I know I screwed up," and ended with, "This is just a break, right? We're not seriously done." In between were the usual half apologies he recycled every time he crossed a line. Lines about how he missed me, how he was confused, how I took things too personally, how he hadn't meant anything by what he said. Like somehow I was supposed to pretend the last few years were a misunderstanding and not a slow-motion erasure of who I used to be. I ignored it, but he didn't stop. He started tagging me in old Instagram photos. Cute ones from weekend trips and concerts, trying to rewrite the story in public. The captions were things like, "Still the best 2 years of my life," and "Wish we could rewind." Friends started messaging me, asking what happened, saying they were confused. I wasn't. His sister called me the next evening. Then his mom. I didn't even know they had my new number, which meant Zach gave it to them. His sister cried on the voicemail. Said he hadn't eaten, hadn't left the apartment, that he was lost without me. His mom left a longer message, breathy and desperate. I know he's not perfect, honey, but he's trying. He needs you. Please don't abandon him right now. That word, abandon. Like I was the one who broke something. Like I hadn't spent 2 years picking up after him while he performed for strangers and treated me like furniture with a debit card. I blocked them both. One by one, the calls stopped. The posts slowed. The text from fake numbers dried up. Maybe he got tired. Maybe someone told him to stop embarrassing himself. I don't know. I didn't care. Every time I got a new notification, I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not anger. Just this quiet confirmation that I had done the right thing. Because this wasn't about a fight. It wasn't about pride or stubbornness. It was about being done with the role I had been cast in, background support in a life I was never really part of. He could rage, beg, cry, perform all he wanted. That chapter was closed. And this time, I wasn't leaving a window open behind me. I stayed with Julia for a few weeks. Her place wasn't big, but it felt like home the minute I dropped my bags on the floor. No tension in the air, no sideways comments, no invisible weight pressing down on me. Just warmth. She let me sleep in, cooked with me when I was too tired to function, and listened without asking for details when I needed silence more than sympathy. I found a studio apartment not long after that. Tiny. A second-floor walk-up with thin walls and a heater that made strange noises at night. The windows rattled when it rained. The bathroom light flickered if I ran the shower too hot. But it was mine. My lease. My name on the mailbox. I bought a cheap rug from a thrift store and a second-hand coffee table that wobbled if you leaned on it too hard. I put up a string of lights, a little plant on the windowsill, and unpacked the box of mugs I had refused to leave behind. I didn't even have a couch at first. I ate dinner sitting on the floor and watched movies with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. And I loved it. Life was smaller, quieter, but it was all mine. I didn't have to apologize for needing space. I didn't have to explain where the money went. I didn't have to write reminders on sticky notes for someone who never intended to follow through. I could just breathe. People started reaching out after everything with Zach fizzled. Some messaged me privately to say they had seen how he treated me, how they hadn't known what to say, but they were glad I finally walked. A few even told me about things he said behind my back, things I hadn't heard and didn't need to, but it only confirmed what I already knew. Leaving wasn't a mistake. It was long overdue. I posted something once. Not a long explanation, not a breakdown of the drama, just a photo of my new place, half furnished and sunlit, with the caption, "If someone treats you like a service, not a partner, don't expect applause. Just walk away. You'll see how quickly the garbage will take itself out." And that was that. So, Reddit, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a moment when you realized someone wasn't your partner, just your burden? I'm curious how others have handled walking away when things got quietly unbearable. Let me know what you think.